Hello again guys, and welcome back to another Big Al Devlin video, and I hope that picture didn't scare you too much because of course it is the countdown to Halloween, and as a bit of fun, as a mini series just on the way up to Halloween, I'm going to be filming a few videos on how to fight certain horror creatures like the skeleton warriors that you just seen from the famous film Jason and the Argonauts, which is for me personally my favourite depiction of what a skeleton warrior would look like and fight like and move like. I think it's fantastic. I don't think it's dated to one point whatsoever at all. Of course there have been other representations of skeleton warriors, and what we need to do is, first of all, before we talk about how to fight these kind of things, if you know, today all of a sudden there was a skeleton apocalypse, not a zombie apocalypse, but a skeleton apocalypse, how would you fight them? But more importantly, how would you fight them with medieval weapons? Because of course we could bring guns and explosives and, you know, other modern day technology into it, and that would overcomplicate it because it would make things a little bit too easy for us, and two, it would be less fun. Okay, we're talking about taking them on with medieval weapons as if we lived 500, 600, 700 years ago. Okay, you can consider armor as well, and things like this. These are the rules of the game, so to speak, and I'd love to hear in the comment section what you think, or how you think you should deal with a skeleton warrior. And I'm just obviously going to start giving you my viewpoints in a minute. Before I do that, however, what we need to do is first of all explain what the skeleton warrior, what its weaknesses and strengths are, and how it's being animated ultimately, so that there's a full understanding of what you can do with it and what you can't do with it. Now, the skeleton warriors, skeletons don't normally get up and start walking around, and there's a good reason for this. Okay, one, they're dead. Okay, so we're dealing with something that's undead. That in essence makes it magical. Okay, so there is magic involved in this. We're not going to use some technology or some animation or anything like that, like this, animating magic or anything to represent the movement and the actions of the skeleton. So what we're dealing with is skeletons that have been brought back to life, if you wish, by using magic. Now, they have no real thought processes of their own. All they know is how to fight and how to kill, and they have that desire to protect their master, just like in Jason and the Argonauts, and you're their target. They're coming after you. So how do you fight that? Well, obviously what's holding them together is, well, they're made out of bone. Okay, we know that. That's pretty self-explanatory. So most of them, parts of them, are going to be fairly hard, but they haven't got any flesh. Okay, so that's an important thing to note. They haven't got a lot of flesh, and that has two-pronged effect. Okay, first of all, it makes them very light, because I think out of the average 70 kilogram male, about 14 to 20 kilos, depending on the size of the skeleton, the height of the individual, so on and so forth. But around about 15 kilos of your body weight is bone. The rest of it is fat, muscle, water, organs, you know, the whole shebang. Okay, hair. For me, we weigh quite a bit. And so what you're dealing with is something that's actually going to be comparatively a lot lighter than what you would normally expect, but also flesh, i.e. muscle, the tendons, the ligaments, so on and so forth, that hold a skeleton together in a living human being, act as shock absorbers. So if you were to hit someone in the arm, for example, around the shoulder region, for example, or no, in the chest. Let's go in the chest. If you were to hit them in the chest, then they've got all their pectoral muscle protecting them. Now, yes, that can hurt. It will still hurt them. Their flesh will hurt as well. But the bones underneath, via the ribs, are less likely to break than simply punching ribs without any form of protection. It's going to hurt your hand more, because you're hitting something that's hard, but at the same time, the skeleton itself will be lacking some degree of protection that flesh gives. So we've defined what the skeleton is in the sense that it is made of bone. Okay, it's lacking flesh, so it's lighter, but also slightly less protected. But I assume it still has the same strength as a normal man. The strength of the man whose skeleton it was, or woman in this case, maybe a female skeleton, but also an angry ex or something like this. But also, as well as this, you've got to consider the connections between the bones. Okay, so bones normally stay together because they are tied together essentially via ligaments. They're held together via a structure called a ligament. Ligaments are strong, really strong. Ligament tears are rare and take high impact sports like American football, rugby, soccer, things like this, and they take really big impacts. It takes that kind of impact to tear a ligament. The bones themselves are fine, but the ligament may tear. And when it does, the joint where those bones were once connected is completely gone. I mean, they literally is as if they haven't got the leg if they tear, a ligament in their kneecap, for example. And so what I'm assuming is that the magic animating the skeleton in this case, or the skeleton warrior, is as strong, regards the binding strength between the bones produces as much strength as a ligament. Okay, so the bones are held together by the same strength as the ligaments and the overlying tendons that sometimes exist. For example, in the kneecap, you do have an overlying tendon, the quadriceps tendon, which the kneecap will sit within. Although they shouldn't have kneecap skeletons. Skeletons don't have kneecaps, but they do have the same protection essentially that the tendon at least would give, and the same strength to holding the leg together. Right, so we know all those things about skeletons. So get writing, guys, in the comments on how you would fight and kill and destroy a skeleton warrior coming at you with medieval weaponry or improvised weaponry. Okay. Now I'm going to give my thoughts. Okay. What I would arm myself with would be, first of all, a shield, because you need defense. I would like chainmail on as well, just for added protection and to give myself added weight, because what I will be acting as will essentially be a juggernaut. Now, I'm not even considering what weapon I'll be using. Okay, I'm considering my protection as a form of weapon, because one of the biggest weak spots of a skeleton is, of course, the fact that it's going to be super light. 15 kilos. I can literally lift that and kill it all day long in one arm. I could pick this thing up by the throat and throw it quite a considerable distance. So this thing is not going to stand in front of me for very, very long. And if I sort of charged at it, berserker style, with my shield and ran into it, and I don't mean you could either run into it and bash into it with the shield, or it doesn't have to be a shield. I say I haven't got a shield, just like a wooden board of some kind with a handle attached that you've made yourself, an improvised wooden thing. It doesn't really matter, as long as it acts like a shield. You run into it and bash into it, you're going to force the skeleton to fly through the air quite a distance, and it's going to hit the ground. And when we fall over and hit the ground, we all the time break bones. You may not be guaranteed a breakage, but look at me, even a big guy like myself, I broke my ankle twice over the last month just through falling over. Okay, so it's more than doable to simply just run at these things and just literally barge them out of the way. Okay, now one good thing is, instead of just running straight into them with the shield, as you run into them, if you have like a round shield, for example, like a Viking shield or a Greek shield, but preferably a Viking shield because of the handle, then basically what happens is, as you run in, bang, you hit them with the shield, so all that running motion goes straight into whatever you're hitting, whatever part of them you can hit, which I would advise would be towards the neck region. The neck is very, very weak. The only reason we don't get decapitated very often is one, we tend to protect our head naturally very, very well, but two, there's a lot of muscle, okay, holding the head up. Without the muscle, the neck is not that strong. Even with the ligaments between the bones, it's not that strong. It's quite easy to knock off. Well, not easy necessarily, but it's a lot easier to knock off than in a living human person. So if you were to direct that shield blow straight to over here, you're either going to break vertebrae, break the jaw, or hit the head off. And that's really what you're trying to do, that you're trying to decapitate the skeleton, because I must assume that if you decapitate the skeleton, it must die. Now, if the skeleton in this case does not die when you dismember it, for example, if you hack off its right arm is still moving around, it's still animated, still trying to grab you, whilst the rest of the body is still trying to kill you, minus its right arm, then you've got serious problems. And I say that this is a whole different scenario. You need to smash the shit out of this thing and grind it into dust. And so if the skeleton can remain animated even though it has parts of it taken off, the bits that are taken off its main torso, its main element, and still remain functional, as I say, you need to grind this thing into dust. You've got serious problems. You can't just simply, well, you can still use this juggernaut tactic to do some serious damage to the to your opponents, and you could take 2 or 3 skeletons on quite easily just by running straight into them, bang, and then shield bash the one next to you, and then shield bash them, and you'll certainly knock them quite a distance onto their back. And once they're on the back, that's when you can deliver the final blow. And this is where we get talking about the weapons. The weapons that I would use against a skeleton would be bludgeoning weapons. I would never ever use a weapon that is piercing for definite, or slashing. You're basically a cutting weapon. Cutting weapons do cut through bone, so if you've got a machete and it's very sharp, and especially if it's a 2-handed machete, then you will be able to cut through bone. But executioner swords, for example, they used to cut straight through the neck and stuff like this, but it's not as easy as you think. Okay, I used to train as a doctor, and I've cut open 1,000 corpses, roughly. I've seen a lot in the dissection room, and I can tell you, bone's a lot stronger than you think. And one of the things about it is yes, you can cut through bone with like saws or bone saws and stuff like that, but that's only if the bone's letting you do it. If it's moving around and attacking you, it's a lot harder to cut through bone than you would otherwise think, especially when you consider when you hit it, the skeleton is probably going to be forced away from when you strike it. A lot of the force is going to be lost because it simply does not knock the skeleton over. So trying to cut for the bone, I think, is never going to work. So you take a big bludgeoning weapon, okay, and you use overhead strikes, because even a bludgeoning weapon, when you hit them, yes, you might shatter the bone. So I would take, in this case, either an improvised weapon would be a sledgehammer, a 2-handed sledgehammer, or more preferably I would want a one-handed, because obviously I'd have a shield, so obviously I'd want a one-handed weapon, and I'd use a bar mace from normally the 13th or 12th century, which is basically 3 or 4 pieces of metal stuck together. Windlass steel forges. Sorry, the windlass steel forge actually make these at the moment. I can't get my hands on one for some reason in the UK. It seems to be only available in America at the moment, but I so want to get my hands on one because it looks amazing. But it's a one-handed mace essentially, where basically it's just a steel rod. That's it. So basically, a steel rod that is like a plus mark essentially. So wherever it doesn't matter about edge alignment or anything along those lines, you hit it, it's going to deliver a huge amount of power across a sort of edge like that, or maybe a couple of edges, and it's just going to do some serious damage because it's heavy. It's a heavy weapon. Now, as I say, striking from the side, that would be okay to some point, but some of the force may be taken out by the fact that the skeleton is quite light and may disperse some of the force by being moved, but simply moved out the way of your attack. A sort of overhead attack towards the clavicle or towards the head would be a preference, in my personal opinion. If you go for the clavicle, this is quite an easy bone to break in many respects, especially with a very strong overhead attack. You've bashed it, it's got back up, bang, you hit it. This is a very easy bone to break. Once you break it, you take out the entire arm. Okay, so if you were to break my right clavicle, for example, I'd be unable to use my right arm. What would happen is my right arm would rotate inwards and I wouldn't be able to use it. Okay, it would rotate inwards and my palm would be facing outwards. Okay, whether that would happen on the skeleton, I don't know, because those kind of motions are forced by the muscles. But nonetheless, if you take the clavicle out, the arm is still going to be useless because it hasn't got a pivot point to work with, a stable pivot point. And so you would have certainly stop the skeleton from attacking you back. So if it's got a weapon, attack a weapon, the clavicle of the arm where it's carrying the weapon. Okay. Preferably, however, I would go for the head, and the reason for this is I'm assuming, as I say, that these things don't remain animated once they have been essentially received wounds that would kill a human being. And I'm not talking wounds like shock or bleeding out or anything like that. Obviously, they're non-considerations for a skeleton. But a devastating blow to the head where the skull is completely removed or destroyed or crushed from the body, that, in my opinion, should become a death blow. If it doesn't, as I say, get rid of the shield, get rid of the bar mace, get a two-handed sledgehammer down your local depot and just get to crunching. You just keep swinging that around like I've done on How to Fight with my Dane axe. If you haven't seen it, I type into my channel How to Fight with a Dane axe, and that swinging motion will just keep you safe. Every time they come close, bang, they're going to get hit and you're going to do serious damage, and eventually they're just going to be able to not move anymore, and once they're pinned on the ground because you've broken their legs or things like this, you then just go up and just crush them to dust, is what I would say. So that's my answer on how to defeat a skeleton or a bunch of skeleton warriors. I hope you found it informative. There will be others because, of course, this is part of the lead up to Halloween. I'm intending to do zombies, which will include Frankenstein, because Frankenstein, in my case, in my opinion, is a zombie. Vampires. I'm not going to do ghosts because they're immaterial. Can't fight ghosts. Werewolves. That was another thing. Mummies. I'm going to do all them. However, if there's anything else that you want me to fight for you, or describe how I would fight it, and even give ideas yourself in your comments to spark my own brain off, then feel free. And if I can film a video on it, I will, because it's a lot of fun talking about all this kind of crap, isn't it? It's never going to happen. I'm just making sure there's no lightning bolts outside and a skull face peering through the window. No, there's nothing there. But if there was, I would have eaten my words there, wouldn't I? But it's never going to happen, guys. This is a fantastical setting where we're saying medieval weapons versus some horror creature of some form. How would you kill it? How would you fight it? And this is how I would fight skeleton warriors. Lovely. Thank you. Bye-bye.